Welcome to Test, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. So I was actually on YouTube the other day, like 2 days ago, and I came across this game. I know that that Manny Pacquiao is like a really big chess enthusiast, so after watching this this exchange between him and this guy in the park, I noticed that he played like quite a few different chess games and stuff like that. So I figured I'll go ahead and cover one of his games. This is leading up to the Adrien Broner fight in 2018. I believe after a workout, he's kind of just hanging out at the park, and this guy approaches him with a chessboard, he just starts playing the game with him. It does pretty good, but yeah. So I'll have down in the description, I'll put the actual like clip itself. So if you guys want to go and check that video out, you more than welcome to. So for all of my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, kamusta? Mabuhay. Appreciate you guys coming and stopping by. Masaya akong makita kang muli. So for all the people that have been watching my channel, maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga channel, all of my channels, and all of my people that are coming for the very first time from the Philippines. I will say, get this first word, maligayang pagdating. What is it? A king channel. Okay. It's gonna take me a while to get that, I think, but I'm just trying to say welcome to the channel. Appreciate you guys coming by very much. I appreciate all the support and all the watching and everything, and so I can't wait for a chess tournament to get back rolling. Definitely. But yeah, if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look, see what we have for this game. All right, so we got e4, we got c5, so we start off with the Sicilian. So we got knight to f3. Like I say all the time, pretty much knight to f3 is going to always be played. Not always, but about probably 70–80% of the time you're going to see knight to f3. You have e6. So I mean, this is a very typical way to to play the Sicilian. It's just basically just just a way to kind of get the bishop out, because you're anticipating d4 coming. The pawn's going to be traded and stuff like that, and so you're going to have like some good range for the bishop to come out. So this is just called the Sicilian French. But we have like kind of some transpositions and some ways that the position kind of changes a little bit. So we see d4, like I said, we got d5. So now we have gotten into what's called the Sicilian Marshal. There are other so when we get into the Sicilian Marshal here, a majority of the time what you're going to see pawn takes. And then after pawn takes, you'll see bishop b5. After knight to c6, you'll see castles. And as you can see, black is kind of like in a little bit of trouble because, after they've developed their knight, the rook is going to be coming over. And then we have the bishop coming over. We're going to have queen to e2. And as you guys are familiar with, you can't castle in this situation because the bishop is going to take the knight. And then as you can see, that bishop is dropping. That is the most common way that it's played. It's not the soundest for black. Another way also is if you were to play another way to get there is if you were to just play kind of like the French starting off. You might have something like this, a typical like way to start the French, and then you would see the c5 pawn come down. Pawn takes, bishop here, knight here, and the major difference between this situation and the situation we saw before is you've kind of made white not waste the tempo, but basically commit their knight to c3 instead of what we saw in the other situation. Like I said, I mean, you see that the knight is not on c3, so you kind of gained the tempo a little bit. But anyway, like I said, we did have d5, and so you have a lot of different little options here. You can take with the pawn, you can take with this pawn, you can play bishop here. Oops. Oh, well, that was actually what was played in the game. So as you guys are familiar with who played the French, this is actually now the French advanced variation. If I was just to flip the board real quick for you, I don't even know how to do that. How do you flip the board? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so if I was to flip the board, I mean, you guys are familiar with, kind of how to get to the French advance. And normally these moves and stuff here, after this, you have this. You have many different ways. You have bishop to d7. You have queen to b6. Many different ways to play. Flipping the board back. Bam. Okay. Like I said, we did have c3 come after e5. No, we didn't. No. Come on, get back. Okay, getting back to what we had. Okay, cool. After e5, we saw a6. Now, the only thing I will say about a6 is it's like extremely passive. because you're not really worried about the bishop here, because you will actually welcome that exchange, because of the simple fact that this bishop, notoriously in the French, is a bad piece, and so you really don't mind trading it off. So if you had a situation where, you know, you played, let's say you played like knight to e7 or something, and you saw bishop to b5, you know, you would just love for this trade to happen, because it basically just gets rid of your like worst piece in your position. So that's definitely something that's welcomed. So a6 just kind of prevents what you don't really want to prevent. So, bam. Okay. So we see c3 by white. And so we see bishop to e7, and this move is going to become significant a little bit later. So we see bishop to d3. We got pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. We have knight to c6. We have castles by white, queen to b6, and we have knight to c3. And just to kind of like pause it here for a second. This is like a very, very serious like discovered attack that a lot of people fall into. I remember when I first started playing, and I first started playing the French, I was like, oh, this is a free pawn. Like, I was like, man, like I'm doing great. So I went into like the knight takes, queen takes, and then I was like completely shocked when I saw this move. I was like, ah, crap. Like my queen is gone, right? You know? And so after you deal with that check, you know, the queen is just going to be dropping. You definitely don't want that. So Manny Pacquiao, he actually sits here for a while. And I really just feel like he was sitting there calculating it. And he might have got stung by this before, and he was kind of like double checking to see if it was the same thing. And it was. So he very smart. He very smartly, if that's even a word, played bishop b4. But like I said before, this bishop to e7 move is going to become relevant because, as you guys saw, he moved his bishop initially to e7, and then he moved it again to bishop to b4. And so that just really just wasted tempo. So already in the position, you see a6 wasted a tempo, and you also see bishop e7 to bishop to b4 did waste. So he's, you know, on top of the fact that he's playing black, he's already kind of doing like a little bit suspect because he's wasting so much time with his moves. So it starts to become really relevant here in a second. So bishop comes to b4. So we have a3, bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3. We have knight g to e7. And this is where things start to kind of go downhill for Pacquiao at first. And I watched two different videos on this. One of them was like the full video, and one of them was only like a 5-minute video. And it cuts off. I'll show you exactly where it cuts off, but it really looks like Pacquiao was like really did dirty. Man, blurred. Okay, so we see knight to g5. And that's already starting to attack like the weaknesses here. You know, you're basically making it very hard for black to castle. Because of course, you know, if you see castles, you're just going to be getting checked here. And then after the king moves over, you're going to be seeing queen here. And that's just the end of the story. We see after knight to g5, we see h6. But then we see queen to h5 because this pawn is pinned to this rook. You definitely don't want to drop the rook for a knight. We see g6, and then the queen maintains the pin. We're coming back to h3. And this was pretty much the part where the first initial video stopped. And I was just thinking, man, like he's being really mean to Pacquiao. Like I really was just feeling kind of bad for Pacquiao at first. And then so we see bishop to d7. And this is where kind of white starts making like some like passive moves. So he goes bishop to e3. Now, if I was to back it up here, like I said, bishop to e3 was what was played in the game. Doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot, right? It's not bad. It's not like horrible, but it definitely doesn't, you know, just keep adding the pressure on, right? So if I stop the position right here for you, what is a very, very strong, like completely like just insane move that white has at his disposal, that basically just continues adding the pressure. And it, like I said, it's a very principled move. It's something that if you guys watch my stuff, it should probably like at least be a move, a thought in your mind. So if you want to go ahead and stop the video real quick and see what white has as a good move, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So it might be slightly hard to see, but the move in this position is actually rook to b1. Now, rook to b1 does a couple of things. Number one, it knocks this queen off of this really nice, like, you know, open, half open file. It does attack this pawn, and it puts black in a more defensive position. Black is in a really defensive position at this point. They don't have a lot of attack going, and their king is stuck in the center of the board. So, you know, it would more or less force queen to c7. After a4, you know, intending to try to put this bishop on this diagonal here. You know, we might see knight to d8. And then we have actually a nice like checkmating If you take the bait, we have a checkmating variation that I wanted to show you guys. So after c4, basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to open up this square for your knight. You're not really caring about your bishop at all, because it kind of looks like, well, doesn't that just give away a pawn? It seems like it, right? So after pawn takes c4, if black is not careful, you'll see knight down to e4. And then if you get really, really greedy, the knight takes on c3. This is actually mating in 3. So after knight to f6 with check, forcing the king over to f8, bishop would take on h6. And then the rook would have to take on h6. And then we'd see queen taking h6, and that'd be checkmate. All she wrote. So, I mean, you can give up the whole kitchen sink, you know, so that you can get checkmate. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you just have 2 pieces left. If you get checkmate, that's literally your whole goal in life. So if you guessed rook to b1, you know, congratulations on seeing like, you know, like nice fundamental principle type moves and attacking moves, tempo gainers and stuff like that. So congrats. But like I said, we did see bishop to e3. And, you know, Manny Pacquiao, he's like, man, he's getting like pawn grubbing, and he's trying to like grab a little pawn here. So the simplest way to really just kind of defend it is rook f to c1. And then after we see rook to c8, might see rook a to b1, queen taking a3, bishop back to d2, rook to c7, protecting the pawn, and then we might see something like knight to f3. But we don't see that. We see actually rook f to b1, which kind of seems like it does attack the queen, but the problem is, you know, your bishop is hanging right here. So after the queen takes on c3, you can't just go off grabbing, you know, pawns here, because then your bishop is going to be dropping. So you have to defend that. So he does it with bishop to e2, but much stronger was actually rook to d1. And what this does is, even after this, you have the ability to take here, because what black is trying to do is black is trying to attack the base of your pawn chain. That's what you want to do when you're attacking, you know, somebody's position. You want to try to attack the base of their pawn chain, because then you can undermine all of their other pawns that are supported by that pawn. So this is the focal point for black in this type of structure, and, you know, a French advance. So, you know, once we either move the bishop or, you know, we go ahead and take the knight here, we don't have any more issues with this pawn. This pawn is completely fully protected, and we're good to go. But he does go bishop back to e2, which allows knight to f5 with no contesting. And then we have knight to f3. And just to be completely honest with you, there really is no reason for knight to f3. The knight was perfectly placed on g5. It's still maintaining this pin. We're not super worried about castling this side, simply because we have bishop takes here. And we're just kind of having like a lot of, you know, issues as far as black is concerned, you know, castling on this side. So, you know, it was really just fine to leave the knight there, but he went ahead and just, you know, retreated it back to f3. But this unfortunately drops a pawn. So the knight takes on e3, pawn takes e3. Then we have queen taking e3 with check. And so now we have a problem because our bishop is just always constantly hanging. So that was one of the main issues that white was having, is that they just were continually having their, you know, their bishop hanging. So they're having to defend that. So the king comes to f1. We see knight taking d4, knight taking d4, queen taking d4. And as you guys can see, you know, black is just basically just cleaning up all the white's pawns. Like Pacquiao's like, hey, I don't want you to have any pawns. Like the game of chess basically is no pawns. So anyway, so we see queen to g3 because, you know, we're having to protect like one of our only pawns left on the board. And then so rook comes to c8. We got rook to d1. We got queen to a4. We have rook d to b1, you know, trying to place a little attack here. And I mean, this is pretty easily defended. I mean, there's b5 here. There's even bishop to c6, which isn't the best. I mean, there's bishop to b5, making sure that we don't block the rook. You know, there's castles. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do in this particular position. So you just have a lot of options. But I will be honest with you, Manny Pacquiao picks probably one of the worst out of all of those. And it was something I didn't even mention, and it was actually rook to c4. I'm not sure if he meant to put it on a different square, but this is like literally just this. And for some really interesting reason, I don't know if this guy was intimidating, but he does not go for that. He comes back and he just takes the pawn on b7. So, you know, I don't really know if he understands that a rook is more powerful than a bishop. I'm not sure what he saw. I don't know. Maybe he thought he was going to kind of get check here, and then he was going to be able to, you know, get this rook over here. Oops. Yeah, I'm not sure. But that's what we ended up doing, taking on b7. But this allows basically Pacquiao to finish the game really nicely with rook to f4 with check. We see king to g1. We got queen to d4. And this is just lights out because this rook is hanging in the corner. And you are now checked with your king. So, I mean, you have a couple of different options. Like you can either move the king over, or you can put the queen in the way somewhere, which none of those are going to really be good at all. So he just moves king to h1, queen takes on a1, bishop takes on f1, and then we see rook taking f1 with checkmate. And Manny Pacquiao does win the game. So congrats, Manny Pacquiao. I mean, there was multiple different ways. I mean, you could have took here with the queen. You know, you just had all kinds of options. Like, it was bad. Really, one of the best ways to defend, I mean, make the position even like somewhat playable, was to actually go after rook to f4 is to go king to e1. After queen to a5 would check, we would see king to d1. After rook to d4, we'd see bishop to d3. And you are at least like, just like a touch surviving the position, but it's just not much. I mean, you're going to have the bishop come in here. You're going to have to sacrifice the rook and bring this over, you know, do stuff like this. But I mean, this is just, it's just bad. It's just really just bad. So, you know, my guy really let, you know, when you go from this position here earlier, where he's playing, where is he at? So he's playing knight to g5 and all of this here. I mean, this was monstrous. Like, like I was really feeling bad for Manny when I watched that first video. But like I said, I'll put that video down in the description so that you guys can watch that full video if you want. I'm not sure who it is, but this guy just kind of streamed it. But Mary Salamat Po, you know, a king magat kaibagan, ingat lagi to you, almasal tayo. If it's when it's going to be breakfast there pretty soon. I just ate my breakfast now. But I appreciate you guys' support, and I'll see you guys next time. All right.